But the day of the Lord is near. But if you read on in that chapter, and we won't take time today, but as you read on in that chapter, it does talk about judgment, that those things that are associated with that last day. But then there's something else. See, God's already made a choice about the sin that we commit, about the wrong choices that we make. There is judgment that is already pronounced and declared on the wrong things, right? But there's also a judgment of blessing on the right things. You didn't hear what I said. I said there's a judgment of blessing. God's already decided what He's going to bless. And when you make the right decision, He's close to bring it to pass. He's there to do just that. So here's what happens. You've got to make decisions, and you are making decisions, either consciously and actively or unconsciously and passively. You're still making decisions. And your decision determines your destiny. Tell your neighbor, your decision determines your destiny. Now, one of the things we pointed out last week is that word translated decision in that verse is the same word for gold. In fact, it's translated gold 3 times more than it is decision. And what that tells us is that how we go about making decisions has to do with our value system. We are in a valley and we see a positive point on one side and a positive point on the other side based on our value system. And that's what challenges us in our choices. Because we see how this could work out for my good, or we see how this could work out for my good. And that's how we make our choices. Jesus said that your heart follows your treasure. Remember that? Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That makes gold a fitting word for them to use in there for decision, because that's what you're deciding on. You know, none of us ever make a decision and say, well, you know, that just looks to me like that's not going to work out good for me at all. It's not going to help me. It's not going to make me feel better. It's not going to make my life better. I think I'll choose that. Do we? Now, after the fact, we have made some decisions that worked out, and we said, man, I wish I had chose that and not this. But the truth is, we make our choices based on our value system. But we've got choices to make. We always have a choice. So, Deuteronomy chapter 30, we find God presenting us with the understanding of what the real choice is. And this is where I learned that your choice is not always what you think it is. Your choice is not always what you think it is. So I think last week we actually started in verse 19, but I want us to back up to verse 15 and get a little bit more of what he says in this chapter. He said, see, I have set before you this day life and good, and death and evil, in that I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in His ways, and to keep His commandments and His statutes and His judgments, that you may live and multiply. And the Lord thy God shall bless you in the land where you go to possess it. But if your heart turn away, so that you will not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them. What draws your heart away? Value system, treasure, right? You're drawn away and worship other gods and serve them. I denounce unto you this day that you shall surely perish, and you shall not prolong your days upon the land where you pass over Jordan to go to possess it. I call heaven and earth to record this day against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your seed may live. Now, God presented the options or the descriptions of life and death, good and evil, blessing and cursing. But the choice that He called you to make, the real consideration was not good or evil. It wasn't even blessing or cursing. The real consideration, the real choice was what? Verse 19. Choose life. Choose life. He didn't say choose between blessing and curse, because everybody, when we choose, we think we're choosing the good, the blessing. It's why we choose it, isn't it? You ever looked and said, that looks like the worst possible option for me. I think I'll go there. No, you always choose what you think is good. Now, the problem is that what we think is good is not always good. Any of you ever been tricked? Did you ever buy something that all of the commercials made look so good, and then you bought it and it didn't work? It didn't do what Ron Popeil said it would do. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You know, all the handy dandy slicer, dicer, fixer, maker, gluer, whatever, all that stuff. You know, and then you get it and you find out it don't work. But it looked good when you chose it. We learned some really good lessons about what's really good and what's not so good. So God didn't say, and this is real important, you don't want to look and try to make your choices based on what you think is good. You know, sometimes we guys, you know, we see the pretty girl and we're like, oh man, blessing, good. Right? Or we see that, girls, you see that good-looking guy and you think, oh, what a manly, studly-looking muffin he is. He's hot stuff. He look good. But he ain't good. He just knows how to behave for 2 to 3 hours at a time. And so, you think, well, he looks good, he acts good, he talks good, I think I'll take him. And you take him and want a refund. Ain't no refund. But you understand what I'm talking about. If he had said to us, choose between what you think is good or what you think is bad or what you think is blessing or what is cursing, we'd foul it up, and we do it all the time. So he said, don't let that influence your choices. Here's what you need to choose based on. Choose based on life, which is connection and fellowship with God, or death, which is disconnection and no fellowship with God. That's your choices. And that's the way you want to make your choices so that you don't end up making the wrong choices. Isn't that right? And so what we want to do is we want to learn to choose life. And if you choose life as God prescribes it, by default, you're choosing to be blessed. You're choosing the blessing because God has already declared what He's blessed. Right? See, our thing is we want to make our plan, we make our determination, our reservations, our arrangements or whatever, and we say, God, bless what I'm about to do. And it's kind of hit or miss, you know. Sometimes He seems to show up and sometimes He doesn't. We think, well, I just don't know why He does me this way. Well, it could be because your choices were not blessable. I know that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's a good one to understand that if God doesn't show up and do what He said He's going to do in His Word, it's not because He has changed His mind and made a different choice. It's because you chose something without considering His Word and instruction. Right? So what we always want to do is we always, even no matter what happens to us, we want to choose life in relationship with God. Don't try to choose based on what looks advantageous. Joseph, you guys remember Joseph, right? I can't read you the account because it's like 10 chapters long, but there is a wonderful historical account of Joseph that begins in Genesis 37, I think, and it takes you through how Joseph was mistreated by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He didn't choose that. But in that, he had a choice to make. He chose to live a life that honored God. Even though he was in a bad place, he was in a place he didn't choose to be or want to be, he could still make a choice to honor God. And he did that. And you know what God did? Blessed him. Because that's always a blessable choice. So God blessed him. As you read his account, he goes into Potiphar's house as a slave, but God blesses everything he touches so that he's promoted and he's handling all of Potiphar's affairs. Well, then Mrs. Potiphar comes along and fouls it up, because she offers him what most people would have said, oh, this looks good. This looks like a pleasurable choice, a good thing. But we know it wasn't a good thing. And so he chose against it. Now that choice sent him to prison. Sometimes when you choose life, it takes you to what looks like going to be a bad set of circumstances. It takes you down instead of up. But don't get so caught up in looking at where you are right this very moment, because God has a greater plan. He's got a declared blessing for us when we choose to please Him. He'll take care of us better than we could have took care of ourselves if we chose what we thought was the better option. So Joseph, he chose the right thing, and it looked like it backfired. You ever do that? I have, and unfortunately I did not do what Joseph did. I got down and I said, oh, I don't like this. I'd like to take that choice back and go back. And I undid some stuff. Well, then I really fouled things up. But Joseph didn't do that, because he knew, even though I'm here and it looks bad, I still got a choice I need to make. What's the choice? Life of God. I need to keep my God connection. I'm ways away from my family, everything I'm familiar with, everything I like, but I can still have God. And so I choose Him. And so he chose to do right. He's in the prison and he's working hard, and so he's promoted, and he's helping people, and so he's blessed. And before long he's running the prison. And not too much longer after that, he's running the country. Number 2 man, actually number 2 most powerful man on the planet at the time. How'd he get there? Chose life. Just that simple. He chose that no matter what place he found himself in, no matter what the pressures were, what the conditions were, he chose life. Life in the connection with God through doing what God says is right. All right? So Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse, well, let's go back to 15. Let me find it. See, I have set before you this day life and good, and death and evil, because see, those go together, in that I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in His ways. I want you to circle the word ways. Because God said, I want you, if you want to be blessed, if you want to have good, if you want to have life, you need to walk in His ways. And today, this is what I told you I was going to tell you last week. I want to tell you about the ways God blesses. The things He's already pronounced a blessing on. Because if you'll choose those things, if you'll choose to do what He's already declared blessed, it's only a matter of time till your blessing shows up. But if you go off chasing what you think is the blessing, you might go way away from God. I know you've heard me tell how that the years ago when Deborah and I were first married, and we were very much financially strapped. We didn't have enough money to pay the bills. And so we're always praying for God to supply our need. And And the way that seemed to be working out was that I would get overtime. I was an electrician's apprentice and made next to nothing on the hour. But at least if I worked on Saturday, they paid me time and a half, and Sunday they paid me double time. I thought, ooh, wonderful. 2 for 1 special. I like that kind of deal. And so I was taking this stuff, and one day in my prayer time, I said, Lord, thank you for that overtime. And he said the most shocking thing to me. He said, don't thank me for that. I didn't have nothing to do with it. Now that just blew my little mind. I thought, how in the world? You're the one they told me to meet my need, to bring good and increase into my life. This is good and increase, and you're saying you didn't do it? And don't tell me the devil's blessing. But he will. What God went on to teach me that day was how what I was doing was I was selling my time with him for a little extra money on the hour. He said, I'll never give you something that takes you away from me. And I had to be real honest, because you can't win an argument with him, I'll just tell you. And there ain't no need trying to lie about it, because he knows the thoughts and intents of your heart. So real quick, I got real honest and realized, yeah, he's exactly right, because I take the overtime and I work, and then I go home and I relax, and I don't give God any time. Well, immediately I repented. I said, okay, I want you more than I want that. So here's what I'll do. I'll turn down the overtime. Now, that really cost me a lot, because the way that system worked is if you turned down the Sunday overtime, you disqualified for the Saturday overtime. They wouldn't let me work Saturday, time and a half, if I wouldn't work Sunday for double time. But I said no, because I chose God. And the marvelous thing was that he met my need without my extra effort. I gave him his time and he supplied what I needed. Turned out I didn't need the overtime anyways. I just needed to choose him. And when I chose him, he caused me to become blessed. Go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Let me show you how it works. We know this. We've read these blessings from Deuteronomy chapter 28. But somehow we just tend to lose our focus, and instead of chasing life with God, we start chasing the blessing that God said he would give us. But what he said in Deuteronomy 28, he said, and it shall come to pass if you, say he's talking to me now, it will come to pass if you will hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do. That's a real important part. You probably should underline it, star it, circle it, highlight it, do something, because sometimes we're observers without doers, and it does no good. But he said, it shall come to pass if you will hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command you this day, that the Lord your God will set you on high above all nations of the earth, and all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you. Have you ever been overtaken by a blessing? You know, I'm not looking for it, but all of a sudden, it's like it just come and envelops me. Sometimes that happens and I feel downright guilty, because I'm overtaken and I didn't do anything to deserve it. See, that's the way he works. That's the way he works. For by grace are you saved. Right? He said, all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you if you, say he's talking to me still, if you shall hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your kind, and the flocks of your sheep. Blessed shall be your basket and your store. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. The Lord shall cause your enemies that rise up against you to be smitten before your face. They'll come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. The Lord shall command the blessing upon you in your storehouses and in all that you set your hand unto. And He shall bless you in the land which the Lord your God gives you. The Lord shall establish you a holy people unto Himself, as He's sworn unto you. If you, say He's still talking to me, if you shall keep the commandments of the Lord your God and walk in His ways, and all people of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of you.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Thank you. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus.
They're afraid of you. You think, man, I'm bad. No, I'm blessed. And the Lord shall make you plenteous in goods. Say, He's still talking to me. The Lord shall make me plenteous in goods, in the fruit of my body, and in the fruit of my cattle, and in the fruit of my ground, in the land which the Lord sware unto the fathers to give me. The Lord shall open unto me His good treasure, the heaven to give rain unto my land in His season, and to bless all the work of my hand. And I shall lend unto many nations, and shall not borrow. And the Lord shall make me the head and not the tail, and I shall be above only, and shall not be beneath. If that I, say He's talking to me again, will hearken unto the commandment of the Lord my God, which He commands me this day, to observe and to do them. Now we should read just a little bit more, because there's more in here. And you shall not go aside from any of the words which I command you this day, to the right hand or to the left hand, valley of decision reference there, to go after other gods to serve them. But it shall come to pass, if you will not hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God, to observe and to do all His commandments and His statutes which He commands this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. And then He goes and undoes all the good stuff He just said He was going to do. But what's the difference? Did He change His mind? Or has He just already said, this is the way that's blessed, this is the way that's cursed? You choose the way. You choose the life. It's really just that simple when it comes down to it. It's your choice. You choose. And when you choose to obey what God says and do things His way because you want to stay in a right relationship with Him, because that's life, then by default you choose to be blessed. And when you choose to go your way instead of His way and do what you think is good or what feels best to you, then by default, you walk away from your relationship with God and you go out of the light into the curse. But it's your choice. It's your choice, right? Now, this is where some people say, well, now, preacher, what commandments? Because, you know, we surely aren't supposed to go around doing everything God said to do. I mean, killing sheep and stoning sinners. We supposed to obey that commandment? Well, no, I don't recommend killing sheep or sinners. Neither one. But the real truth of the matter is God never said, blessed shall you be if you kill sheep and sinners. Did He ever say that? But He did say, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. Right? In fact, let's just go there. I'm going to give you real quick, I'm going to give you 5 ways God says are blessed. And these are the ways you want to choose. We'll start with Psalm 1, verses 1 and 2. And you may not want to turn to these. You may just want to make note of them and look at them later. for the sake of time, because I'll go through them kind of quick. I'm going to try to get out of this inside 10 minutes. Psalm 1, 1 and 2. He said, blessed is the man. This is what's already blessed. The man that does this is going to be blessed. So you should want to know, what's that man doing? Here's what he said. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. Let me tell you what that means. That means that the person who refuses to go along with what the world says and compromise on what God says because they love God and trust Him and want to know what His Word says so they can do what His Word says so they can stay in relationship with Him, that person is declared blessed. Right? So the world may say, hey, you know, that going to church thing, that's outdated. We don't need that anymore. And that Bible, well, that was written so many years ago, it's not relevant to us. The ungodly will give you all kind of good sounding excuses for not doing what God tells you to do. And he'll make it sound good and look good and feel good, but it's not blessed. If you want to be blessed, it's do what God says, no matter what anybody else says, and like it when you do it. I mentioned this in marriage class, and I'm sorry if y'all think I bring too much marriage class out here. But one of the things, we talked about how to make agreements in marriage, and one of the things we said is that your goal is always mutually enthusiastic agreements. You want to make decisions that you both can feel really good about. And what we said is that even though all of the old-timers, or not all the old-timers, but a whole bunch of the old-timers have said to us, son, when you get married, there's a lot of sacrificing you're going to have to do. We're teaching our married couples that we want to have a sacrifice-free marriage. Because sacrifice says you're doing what you don't want to do, you're losing so I can gain. And because I love Deborah, I don't want her ever to lose. And so my theory is this. I don't want her to do for me what she don't feel good about doing, because if she's not enjoying it, I'm not either. Do you know God said that to me one time in worship? I was offering the sacrifice of praise, but I had the wrong idea about it. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to do it. But I said, God, you said, so I'm gonna. And real quick, he said, you know, if you're not getting anything out of it, don't think I am either. He wants you to want to. That's why this whole blessed business starts with, and you shall love the Lord your God and walk in His ways. He wants you to want to. Because that's how you develop relationship. Right? So there's a blessing when you love His Word. And you want to know it, and you want to do it, and you refuse what the opposite says, right? Number 2, Psalm 94. Psalm 94, verses 11 through 13. Here's what he said. The Lord knows the thoughts of man, that they're vanity. Blessed is the man whom thou chastenest, O Lord, and teaches him out of your law, that you may give him rest from the days of adversity until the pit be digged for the wicked. Blessed is the man whom the Lord chastens. If you want to be blessed, let God correct you.
There's no God like Jehovah. 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 There's no God